Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to Teach Tales. Today I am presenting to you the first and the most primary concept when it comes to teaching and learning Pakistan studies. Today we will be shedding a light on the topic Introduction to Ideology. I request you to subscribe to the channel and click on the bell button so that you can receive further notifications enlightening you about the topic and the subject. This lesson contains four topics. The first is the definition of ideology. We will also talk about the components of ideology. Then we will move on towards the principles of democracy in Islam. And in the end, summing all three, we will also talk about the ideology and national character. One look at the word, and we quickly understand that this word is a combination of two words, idea and logy. The study of the science of ideas is known as ideology. Ideology is basically the foundation or the principle which works and functions behind the operation of anything in the world. If you are talking about the construction of a skyscraper, there is always an ideology behind it. If you are talking about the formation of a new country, there is always an ideology behind it. In this chapter, we focus on the ideology that led to the creation of Pakistan as an independent country. If we go and check the word-to-word definition of ideology, we will come to know that basically it is a set of beliefs, ideas, or principles that guide and shape a person's or a group's understanding of the world, their values, and their opinions. Let me take an example over here which will help you understand what ideology is. Let us assume that there is a competition in which a group from each class is participating. Every group participating in that competition will have an ideology, and that ideology will be functioning in alignment with their wish to win the competition. So basically, any action or any reaction that takes place in the world politically or socially is always inspired by an ideology. When we talk about the creation of Pakistan, we all know that Hindus and Muslims were living together in the subcontinent, in the South Asian subcontinent, and there were some issues between Hindus and Muslims, including the British as well, which led the Muslims to believe that they could not live with Hindus anymore. And this is how two nation theory as an ideology was born during the late 19th and the early 20th centuries. Basically, if you see two nation theory, it is a theory that asserts that Hindus and Muslims were distinct and separate nations. Up till now, they were living together, that was fine, but now they cannot live together anymore, which is why there was a need to have a separate state where Muslims can practice their own beliefs and Hindus are also free to do so. One thing that is established here is that an ideology always grows amongst the dissatisfied group in a society. If a group is satisfied, they will be functioning under the ideology which is existent already. But if there is a group which is dissatisfied with their current conditions, there will be a new ideology which will be born and it will be implemented. According to this theory, the Muslims of the subcontinent could not have a separate country until and unless every one of them, each one of them, united on this ideological front that they wanted a separate country. Even this demand of a separate country was put when every Muslim belonging to any political party living in any part of the subcontinent united with the same thinking. It is very important for countries to come together and have a unified ideology in order to have something that they desire. Moving on to the contents of ideology now. There are four things that make an ideology complete. If you're talking about a group of people who have one ideology, then they must be having a common religion because it is a binding force for all the nations in the world. They must be having a common culture. We very clearly see that most of the times the culture and traditions are inspired by religion. So it is very simple to say that if someone has a common religion, then they will also have a common culture. And when we are talking about a dissatisfied group, they have a common cause. In case of Pakistan, in case of Muslims, at that time the Muslims wanted a separate state which served to be the common cause. And finally, once the group has a common religion, they have a common culture and traditions, and they also have a common cause. The fourth element that completes the ideological composition is dedication. The dedication of people to any cause energizes and enriches an ideology. So let me give you an example. Let us all assume that Pakistani Muslims, when they were living in the subcontinent, all of them were Muslims, which united them as a force. All of them practiced the common culture, which is they celebrated the same festivals, they greeted each other with assalamu alaikum, and they practiced every other thing that the Muslim religion asked them to, which is why they were more united. And the common cause at that time was the acquisition of a separate Muslim state. And then finally, all of them combined together, channelized all their energies, synergized, and finally we got Pakistan as a country. So therefore, we can see that dedication was also there. So any nation who claims to have an ideology should have these four common things, which is common culture, common religion, common cause, and dedication. Only then they will be able to achieve what they are trying to achieve. If we talk about Pakistani ideology in particular, then we see that it was born, but there is always a mother to anything which is born. In case of an ideology, there must be a source from which this ideology is springing. There must be an inspiration. And in inspiration, when it comes to Pakistani ideology, were three things actually, which is number one, Holy Quran. Al-Quran provides detailed guidance to all the Muslims concerning the way of life, and then Sunnah, which is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life and the way he spent his days and nights. So those teachings also help Muslims have an ideology. After these two things, one very important thing is the cultural and traditional values. These values make us one, and these were the values for which we were actually fighting. So we can say that there are three common sources of Pakistani ideology. Number one is the Holy Quran, the second is the Sunnah, and the third is the cultural and traditional values of Muslims. Finally, we are moving on to the most important topic under this heading, which is principles of democracy in Islam. So basically, we all know that we in Pakistan practice democracy, but as a Pakistani, we need to understand how this democracy is known as a democracy. What are the four pillars that are holding this democracy? These four pillars are not just a support to the existing democracy, but they are also a checklist for every government. So be it the government of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, be it the government of Prime Minister Imran Khan, or be it the government of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, whichever government will be formed, they will always have to ensure that these four principles of democracy are followed. We begin with justice. It is very important for a society to have justice. Now, an example of justice when it comes to the principles of democracy in Islam is the framing of Pakistani Constitution 1973. It is basically a document which has the rights and responsibilities of the citizens and the government recorded. So this constitution serves as a checklist for what is supposed to be done in this country and what is supposed to be avoided in this particular country. If any government is forming itself and forming the ranks of the governmental offices, it has to ensure that justice should be its priority and the government works in a just way, in a transparent way, because this is one of the most important pillars of democracy in Islam and in Pakistan. Then comes equality. In Islam, we are taught that there is no difference between the rich or the poor. There is no difference between people on the basis of their caste, their color, their creed, which is why we say that Islam is the torch bearer of equality. It encourages its followers to never discriminate. So when we talk about equality, It should be the practice of the government to ensure that the differences between the rich and the poor are eliminated. Then we move on towards the third principle, which is fraternity. In simple words, you can call it brotherhood. As Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that all Muslims are brothers to one another. Fraternity is a principle that requires all Muslims to support each other and stand by each other in all times, whether good or bad. This brotherhood will always result in peaceful conditions of the country, helping the country to progress and show great success in the world. Finally, moving on to the greatest of all virtues and the fourth principle, that is tolerance. It saves people from hardships and promotes love for others, and it is needed in all countries so that people can lead a peaceful life. When we talk about justice, an example is the constitution, the judiciary. When we talk about equality, an example could be an example could be the economic policy of Pakistan, which tries to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor people. When we talk about fraternity, the biggest example is the festivals that we celebrate in Pakistan, where Muslims greet other Muslims and spend, time with them. We talk about zakat, we talk about helping the poor. All of that will fall into fraternity. And when we come to tolerance, the Jarawala incident is an example of the lack of tolerance, where Muslims did not tolerate or did not try to find out the actual reason for the accusations, and they attacked an entire community. So that clearly showed lack of tolerance, and if tolerance is practiced, such things will not happen. Finally, we understand the importance of ideologies because all the countries in the world, the successful ones and the not so successful ones, and even the ones who are on their way to success, should understand that they are dependent on ideologies. If USA is USA today, and if China is China today, all of this is possible because they have an ideology in mind which they follow till death. Thank